Welcome to yet another of our Lumrus Forum, where we look at topics of interest. A lot of these topics that we discuss on Lumrus Forum comes in from our community. We do a lot of horizon scanning here at Lumrus, and we spot some of these trending topics. And so we organize these forums to have discussions around them so that people in our community, our clients and well-wishers can learn and be informed and participate in the discussion as well. So my name is Romeo Fs. I'm the founder and CEO of Lumrus, and I am really very pleased to be joined today by Mike Blackburn, OBE. Mike is a member of the Lumrus Advisory Board, someone who I've known for a number of years, and I would say one of the best persons to be involved in this discussion. Mike, what are some of the advantages of having a board with the senior leadership team? They're usually diverse, they have diverse thinking, etc., to grow the business. But when you have a board that is made up of people who are not in the business, that are coming non-exec directors, as they are called, what are some of the pluses or minuses of having a board? I mean, we touched on some of them, but having a board structured that way, a group of individuals that are people who are not in the business with people who are in the business, kind of working together for the business.
So there's both advantage and disadvantage. The one thing you've got to make clear, first of all, is non-execs are not there to run the business.
Right. Yes.
The execs are there to run the business. The non-execs are there to seek assurance that the executives are running the business in the appropriate way that is structured under the rules and amendments, the articles of amendments, whatever it is, however that organization is set up. Remember, right. I said you have a document about the purpose, the structure, the framework, who's accountable, how do you make decisions, all those terms of reference, or whatever you want to call them, articles of association are written down. And as a non-exec, you're there to ensure that they follow those rules and regulations, that they are on track financially and economically and socially to meet all their purposeful objectives. But in doing that, that's in my experience so far, that's the bit I don't find most interesting, because it's kind of semi-technical in a sense that you got to do. You just have to do that. What I found best, I'll give you an example of what I've been doing in one organization. I've been helping it get closer to its customers. Think about the customer experience, because I've got a background in doing some of that.
Right.
Think about different methods of engaging your customers. How do you go on the customer journey in your organization? And I found, for example, that they talked about its purpose, then it talked about its mission, then it talked about its objectives. It was 3 layers down before they even mentioned the word customer.
Wow.
And I said, how can the customer be the heart of your business if you don't even talk about it until it becomes one element of one part, 3 layers down? It has to be there front and center, not in your top level, your purpose, but it's got to be in the top 2 there.
Yes.
So I've been helping them go on what I call or deliver their customer experience program, just challenging and thinking about introducing them to individuals or books I've read or amazing people I've met or organizations I've met, and then validating along the way, asking the daft laddie question every so often, the question that nobody wants to ask. So I'll ask, why do you do that? What result did you expect to see? So good non-execs and good advisors will not only challenge, but they'll support. They'll get you to think. A number of times, Romeo, people come back saying, "Oh, there's only one option here." No. One of my rules is I want you to give me at least 3 other options. So I want to see 4 options for everything.
Because usually that one option tends to be biased to that person's viewpoint.
Of course,
right?
It does. Of course it does. And back to the point of a diversity of view in the management team, the executive team. You get the different views, and the aim of a good leader is to listen to all those views without sitting on the fence, sitting on one or behind one. I always remember going to a board meeting when a financial director in BT was there, and he was chairing the board. And cutting a long story short, I did say to him at the end, "Why do you never speak first? You always ask for everybody else's opinion first."
Yeah.
And he said, "Because as the leader, if I tell everybody my opinion, those who are quieter in the room, those who don't willingly give their views, might say, well, that's the boss's opinion. Therefore, I'm not going to speak against it."
Yes.
So I get the others in the room first. And do you know what? He said, I get better ideas than the one I ever had in doing things. And it encourages people, you develop people. And that's partly what your non-execs are there to do.
Absolutely.
To ask those questions and to sometimes be the first to ask the question, but never necessarily the first to give an opinion on something without understanding it all first.
And being like devil's advocate sometimes. I mean, you might
Sure.
even already agree with the viewpoint, but you're actually just poking and being devil's advocate just to see if the exec has really thought through the
Absolutely.
thing that they're presenting.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And back to my point about the customer experience, as a non-exec, I'll be asking that question. Well, how will my 15-year-old nephew view it, and how will my 85-year-old mum view that?
Yeah.
Two ends of spectrums. Yeah, my mum's digitally a digital native. She's brilliant digitally, but my youngster, my nephew, doesn't use email. He's more social media driven. So
True.
different aspects of the digital technology band, and we
Yeah.
label everything digital. So my as a non-exec, I'll unpick that word digital.
Yes.
Yeah. Good corporate governance allows your non-execs to challenge, help, support at different stages of your journey. Oh, sorry. You need to think about this, though. That means you might change your advisors en route.
Good point.
You don't
Yes.
have to keep the same people on board. So keeping terms of engagement.
Yeah.
But writing down, I'd expect if I'm being employed by somebody or not employed, just helping, you normally would expect, so what is it you're looking to get out of me as an experienced individual? And for how long should I do this before we start challenging to say, is it time to move on? Because challenge is good.
Yes.
And you might still be re-engaged, but you might time out. And better the person that puts the hand in the air saying, I think I've timed out on this now. You're better than I am. You've moved on. You've stripped me of what I've got. I can no longer help.
Yeah.
That's a good challenge. Otherwise, your organization will get held back by the weakest link again.
So true. What about this whole notion of stakeholder confidence? And by stakeholders, I mean, your suppliers, your customers, the community that you work in, the wider community. I mean, do you think that plays a pivotal role, or do you think stakeholders look up to the fact that they have a board or have a board of advisors? Do that helps to build confidence in stakeholders that interact with your business?
For sure. It's, if I'm starting to look at using an organization, the first thing I'll do is go on its website or look at its articles of association, or look at what's its name and its purpose. Even if you register a company house in the UK, you still have to put a title in there for your organization. Are you a consulting organization or a community of interest? So I'm intrigued by that always, but as to how they name themselves. And as I start to get to, if I'm going to work with them, I want to know how do you make decisions? Where's your structure of your legal structure of the organization, as well as or a charitable company or community interest company? So how do you fit in those? What's your management practices? Who makes decisions? How do you make decisions? How do you review those decisions? And how do you make sure? So what's the basis, the foundation for making those decisions? So do you really reflect the interest of the local community? But you say you do. Do you really? So show me where in your decision making that the community has a voice to kind of interact and to help in those. How do you deal with conflicts of interest?
Yes.
So if your community you're building a road and the community is anti the road, but your local authority wants the road. How are you going to manage that conflict in doing all those things? That's a policy, and policy is all part of governance.
Yes. And I like the idea you shared as well. Like, a lot of people don't recognize that this can also help in terms of innovation as well, because of the questions as well. And also, the adaptability, because I mean, as circumstances change and, the geopolitical environment change, this is where the non-execs can also bring their kind of experiences to kind of,
They bring impartiality. Even if they're being paid, non-execs have to bring impartiality. That's the whole point of being a non-exec. They bring constructive challenge, and your state. Some people have on the board as an advisor. Sometimes, depending on your company, might have somebody from the local community on the board. If you're a housing association, why wouldn't you have a resident on your board? Reflects those. I got 17 schools that I chair the board of, the 17 schools, and all our schools have a pupil representative, a staff representative, and a community representative, a parent representative, as well as a community representative. So we listen to those voices. To your point, though, earlier on, we always say just because you have the ability to give us the voice doesn't mean say your answer is right, the right one.
Yes.
And we still might do something different.
Yeah.
But we will respectfully listen to your voice. And if we choose not to go with you, we'll tell you why we've chosen a different route.
Yeah.
So you get that constructive challenge from individual. To your point, Remy, you get specialist expertise.
Yes. Yes.
Really give you in-depth advice and guidance. And that's worth checking out when people say they've got specialist expertise. When? Have they got 20 years of experience, or is it 1 year repeated 19 times, which is not necessarily 20 years experience? They enhance your reputation.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
If you get the right people in there, the ability to go to your backers and your financiers and say, I'm doing these things, and I've got this person who's now advising, formally structured
Yes.
here. Some are looking at, wow, somebody's got that experience. Thank you. And as you grow reputationally, that helps. They bring networking and external contacts.
Yes. Yes.
But you've got to be clear whether you're going to use them or not, and how you're going to use them. Because from a non-exec point of view, if that's all they want, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Right.
So don't do it to me later on in life and then say, oh, give me 15 of these, and can you go and sell on our behalf? That's not what I'm there for as a non-exec or advisor. They can give you advice on compliance and governance.
Yes.
Personally, I'd never even thought about, but they can give you advice and guidance on doing that. And the other one, of course, is risk management. If they've been in it, what could they do to help mitigate risks, to advise you on that? And you might find 2 or 3 people who could help you on all those areas. But I can't think of a single organization who's got to that past pre-seed, that early venture stage, who isn't start thinking about all those things.
Yeah.
And if they're going to get funding, I'm pretty sure their funders will be asking some of those determining questions. And they want to make sure it's not just Romeo who's telling me all the answers. There is a structure and a framework and a format behind that I can really trust.
Yeah. And you can't find one non-exec director that will bring all of that. So or one person that will bring all of that. You brought up the whole point of conflict of interest, and it's a question that someone also posted on our social media feed around this topic as well. Was they wanted to understand for a startup or SME, what does conflict of interest looks like, and if we can help them to kind of identify that
from an advisory point of view, or from the board point of view, or the organization.
I think from the organization point of view, but I would also say from a board point of view as well.
Okay, so
or from a governance perspective, what does conflict of interest look like?
So I would expect everyone I've been engaged with who's asked me for advice and guidance and becoming a non-executive advisor, whatever, to at least list out which organizations am I currently working for, and which organizations have I got a vested interest in. So if you were to employ me, Romeo, and I was already investing in one of your competitors, or I'm advising one of those, you'd want me to at least share that with you. And there's an obvious conflict, because I'm now conflicting. You'd also, if you looked at me and said, you've got ethical things in your background, Mike, and your current scenario of organization you're working with, which don't play to your purpose and ethics, there's a conflict where you would easily probably say, we shouldn't be working together. You might have global conflicts, but it's about being open and transparent about what your interests are, what interests you have in other organizations or have had in your past that you need to explore and explain. So why is that important? Because if I was a financial advisor and started financially advising you to go and get an investment from X, and X is a company I have significant shares in or interest in, or my wife does, or my children do, whatever, there's a conflict. So why would I try and increase stakeholder value just for me? That doesn't increase stakeholder value for across the piece. Actually, it shouldn't be for me at all.
Yeah.
So I put that hand in the air. Now you get situational conflicts as well as, so some conflicts you have to declare and say, I can't possibly work for you in that case.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. But you might have situational ones. So when I was on the board of the LEP and they were looking to find major companies like BT, Vodafone, Virgin to come and invest in putting fiber infrastructure in the ground, as soon as that came to the board on the board paper, I declared my interest, which is on statutory on the list there anyway.
Yes.
I will step away from being chair.
You recuse yourself. Yes.
I'm allowed to be in the room.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to make a comment. I'm allowed to respond to information. So if there's something factually incorrect, or they say, what does fiber mean? I can give them the answer. Once they start getting into potential contract or financial information, I would leave the room and not even see the papers
Yes.
that they're all looking at. So there'll be separate set of papers, and I wouldn't ask questions, and I'd go back in the room when they're finished, but I'm out of it at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Or if we're making decisions on investing in a company and I knew it was you that we were about to invest in, I'd recuse myself immediately, saying, I know Romeo is a personal friend and a business person I know and recognize, and I can't possibly be involved in that decision-making process.
Yeah. I remember being a Ned on a particular board, and the founder wanted to award a contract to one of his family's friends or something like that, a cousin or something like that. And the cost of the contract was much higher than all the other bidders that came in, right? And that in itself is a conflict of interest. And he thought that because, I am the owner of this business, I have majority stake, I can make a decision. The board had to say, look, that's why we are here. That's why you have a board, so that we can protect you. Because at the end of the day, if we award this contract and this person runs off with the money, then you're going to have to be answerable, to all of this. So we had to then pretty much just kind of say, there is a process that needs to go through. You have to identify that this person personally. And we only knew that he knew this person personally because another member of the board brought it up, right? And yeah, and and we have to make sure that there are the proper infrastructure is in place. So at the end of the day, we had to say to him, look, we have to go through all three of these. We have investors that we're answerable to. So we have to go through all three of the bids that have come in, and we have to select, or your committee has to select the best bidder for this job. If it happens to be this person, that is fine. If it's not, and then you just have to live with it. Then that's just it.
Absolutely. And but it's that thing. And if you go back to whether you're a startup or anything else, and link that back into governance, it's governance steers those, and we've touched on this a couple of times. Is steering companies towards a sustainable growth platform, and ethical excellence.
Yes.
So how do you bring those two things together? And that's what governance ultimately does, about sustainable growth and ethical excellence. And big corporations have these big bureaucracies that help them do that. Startups face that challenge, and small businesses, in balancing the power dynamics between ownership and control. So who's owning it and who's controlling the business? And that's quite a balancing act, because sometimes the owner doesn't want to release control.
Yes.
At that pivotal point, when I remember a friend of mine, she went off on holiday and was away for a month, and came back, and the business had run brilliantly while she was away. And that was a pivotal moment for her. Realized it can run without me, so I can change how I work. That might sound silly, but she didn't recognize that before she went away, she said. But that balance, though, is
it's hard for founders, as someone who has founded a number of businesses. It's hard for us founders to do that. But you are, before, one of the other things as well is, like, just practically looking at, we spoke a lot about the fact that governance is about putting in the structures in place to make sure that the business run efficiently. And just before we came on, you were sharing an example of this on a small businesses that you're on the board of. And it would be great if you kind of share that as well with our audience, so that I think we have like 112 people on this webinar right now, so that they can see practical terms. This was where you're talking about the widgets and the change in the office and that kind of stuff.
So sometimes your advisors, your non-execs, your people who are just coming to help you, can see things that you can't see. And I was working in an organization who were an engineering-based organization, and they were employing 20, 30 people. They had very informal practices in play to doing things. So as a good example, which I'd spotted, there was significant investment of money coming in, which would allow them to grow on the new contracts, and they were going to move offices or grow on a second floor. And I was asking the question of, how are you going to determine where people sit? Because it really matters. Emotionally it doesn't matter, but actually practically for the business. And I'd been in that morning, and I'd seen that one of the engineers had come in at 7 o'clock, and the person who does all the procurement as well as the health and safety and various other aspects of the small business was in the office. And as he walked in, he happened to take, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I'll call them crimpers, a tool. And he shouted across the office to Joe and said, "Hey, Joe, I'm just taking the last set of crimpers with me." So, yeah, off you go. And Joe immediately went on the system and ordered some more crimpers. And I said to them, that's an informal method of communicating.
Yes.
When you go into this new organization, where are you going to sit Joe? Well, Joe's going to be upstairs and the engineers are on the downstairs floor. How's that informal communication going to go on? Because the engineers will walk in with the best will in the world. They'll take the last crimpers and they'll be determined that they'll fill in the form when they come back at the end of the day, but probably will forget. Yeah. Meanwhile, Romeo rocks up, wants to have the crimpers for a big job he's got, probably the biggest job he's ever had, and there's no crimpers left. So what they introduced, rather than change structure and bring people down, they introduced Slack and said, let's have an informal social media type activity where we can just inform people. So the engineer was able to whack a message quickly to Joe and say, last crimpers, just taken them. And it took him a couple of seconds to do it and walk out. But it was just a good way of thinking about the informal communications that go on and how you don't overtly, you didn't put an email system in place for that. You didn't put a form in place. So take the form off the wall, fill it in, stuff it over here and pass it round. It was something dead quick and easy. But do you know what? The owner hadn't spotted that.
Yeah.
Why would he? He hadn't been down there for ages at 7 o'clock in the morning when the engineers arrived, because he's moved on from that. So it's that sometimes silly things that you spot that could help get them, at least stop making mistakes in the future.
And I like that really very simple kind of example, because it shows how simple, having good governance in your organization can help with the efficiency of your organization, right? Because if the crimpers go completely, then your entire system, runs out. Listen, we could talk about this forever, and we have a few questions coming in. So just before we go, I think one of them that I'm spotting here is, what are the potential risks of neglecting corporate governance in startups? I know we spoke a bit about that, but can you just expand on that a little bit more?
So the obvious one in doing that is you get to legal difficulties. You fail to register for the right taxation or the right material things with your government, whatever your government requires. You just don't fill in your. I mean, the worst thing for a small, but not the worst thing. What a bad thing for a small business is to be late in filing, as an example, on a quarterly basis. And it's the most boring thing to have to file, I'm afraid. But it has to be done. And if you miss the date, you don't know the date. That pitch to that new investor is coming tomorrow, and I've got to file tomorrow. I'll go and do the pitch, and I'll file the next day.
Yeah.
So you've got all the compliance and regulatory things that could go wrong. You could lose. The worst thing for me, though, if you don't think about structure and decision making, you might have some amazing potential people in your business, in your 5, 10, 15, 20 employees, who suddenly get thinking, nobody's listening to me. I've got great ideas, and there's no structure framework to chat about ideas, or nobody engages with my part of the business. I don't see the bosses very often. Nobody tells me where I'm going. And they leave. And it's hard to replace a good person, let alone a great person, and it costs you money to have to recruit. So think about it for the internal of how you communicate, particularly as a small organization. You first started off, Remy, if you've got 5 people, you'd often have a weekly chat with them as you go in the office, and now you do Teams or whatever, just to have, and you're doing that as much to listen as you are to speak. But your people want to be proud of you as well, so you're going to tell them what you're doing. But once you get 30, 40, 50, 60 people, you need more structural engagement. You might have a Coke and a pizza on the third Friday of the month, whatever, just to tell them what the results are, or that in fact you got investments or whatever. And the final one, the impact on your investors or stakeholders or communities. If you fail to do things, reputation is quite a fragile thing. And if you become reputable for bad practices, or for not filings, or for ignoring your local community, or your stakeholders or your investors not getting the right information, that's just damaging to the next level of your business that you want to be. Remember what I said at the very start, governance is phased. Governance is evolving as the company grows over time. So you start with small governance, the right governance though, and then you grow your governance over time.
And that leads, that's spot on. That leads to, I'd probably say, the final question that I think this is coming from YouTube. It says, I am a I'm a founder of a Series A funded business. I'm overwhelmed with day-to-day operations, but want to implement good governance. What should be my what my starting point or first step?
Well, first of all, you've recognized it. That's the first step. Recognizing that a change is required.
Yeah.
So the second step is doing something about it, and thinking what is getting in the way. So to go back to my point of what is the purpose of the organization, its direction, its objectives, its KPIs, its function, and what is getting in the way. And sometimes getting in the way is lack of time. Sometimes it's
yes,
you're not available to make the decisions. In that small organization about the crimpers, by the way, I was talking about, quite often in that room, I would hear something issues over here. We need to buy something, but the boss is out and we haven't got the authority to buy. So I asked them, can we put some structures in place of delegated authority to spend up to a limit of £50, £100 or whatever?
Yeah.
So you do, and I'm afraid, with good governance, start having to put a few rules in place, a few powers and accountabilities, and governance just merely states that. What are the rules? Who's got accountability? Who can make decisions? Up to what level? How are you going to review those? How are you going to value them? So putting a few of those in place at the start will be useful. Sorry, as you grow and meet these things, will be useful. But if you haven't got the time to do it, or it's not your bag to do it, you'll have somebody in the organization who possibly, or an advisor who will do it with you. There's plenty of good material out there from organizations who will help you free of charge. Certainly in the UK anyway, help you do that free of charge, some advice and guidance free of charge. It's what my company, the growth company, does. That's part of its business in the Growth Hub.
The Growth Hub, yes. The Growth Hub. Yeah. Even Chamber of Commerce's as well.
Absolutely. Federation of Small Business, your local. Be careful about, you always got to be careful about taking advice from the happy amateur. You want to take professional advice.
That's so true. I like the idea about the happy amateur. Yeah, because you have quite a number of those out there as well.
And they always connect you in the pub.
And especially after two beers, they're an expert at everything. Listen, Mike, we're coming up to the hour, and I want to respect time of your time. You've been amazing in terms of giving us the time to do this, and I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone who decided to jump in and participate on this webinar. The recording will be available, and if you are not yet in our community, feel free to join us on social media, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, at Lumerous PLC, and get involved in the conversation. Mike, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll have you on again for another topic around something. I mean, you have so much things we can talk about as well, right?
Great to see you, Remy. Lovely to talk.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye for now.
Bye now. Take care, everyone.